Okay, so we see these chasing arrows everywhere. That little triangle.
Right.
That's supposed to mean, like, this is recyclable, right?
Yeah.
But what if those arrows are leading us in the wrong direction? Like, what if they're not what we think they are? So
Yeah.
today, we're going deep, really deep into this whole world of plastic recycling.
Okay.
We'll be looking at some stuff from The Guardian, some pieces from ProPublica, and they both kind of point to the same thing, which is these symbols can be super misleading.
Yeah, it's true.
So hopefully, by the time we're done with this deep dive, you'll have a way better idea about what those symbols actually mean.
Yeah.
And, you'll be able to, like, make better choices as a consumer. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like what you buy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how we've all been kind of like trained to think that these symbols automatically mean something good for the planet. Like we're doing our part.
Yeah, totally.
But there's this article in The Guardian from 2022, and it drops this like really startling statistic. It says that only 5% of all the plastic waste in the U.S. was actually recycled that year.
5%? Really?
5%.
Wow, that is way lower than I would guessed.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I think most people, myself included, we just kind of assume that a lot more is being recycled.
For sure.
Like way more than that.
Yeah,
So what's
exactly.
happening to the rest of it, right? The other 95%.
Exactly. And that's the big question. And it gets even kind of worse, a little scarier, when you dig into another Guardian article from 2024, just this year.
Oh, wow.
And they explain how companies have been slapping these recycling symbols on things that are basically like impossible to recycle.
Quartz.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Like it's just not going to happen. So, it's kind of like a big greenwashing scheme where
Yeah.
they're making these products seem, eco-friendly and all that, but the reality is totally different.
Ugh, that is so frustrating. It makes you think about, like, all those times you've, like, really carefully washed out a container, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, to recycle it.
Right.
Thinking, you're doing your part.
Yeah.
And it might have just been a total waste of time. It's just, like, so misleading. But how does all of this really connect to the whole, like, massive problem of plastic pollution?
So if most of us are thinking that like most of our plastic is getting recycled, we're probably not going to be as worried about, cutting back on how much we use or demanding better solutions from the companies that make this stuff.
Right, right.
To really bring it home, in 2021, the average American, just your average person, threw out about 300 pounds of plastic.
300 pounds.
300 pounds. That's a huge amount of trash.
Yeah, it is.
And if most of it's not actually being recycled, it's got to go somewhere, right?
Sure, yeah, of course. So it sounds like a pretty big problem.
It is.
Are there, like, any efforts going on to, hold these companies accountable, like make the labeling more accurate?
Yeah, there are actually. The Federal Trade Commission, they call it the FTC.
Okay.
They're thinking about putting out some new guidelines for, what you can actually call recyclable and compostable.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the idea is to have stricter rules, like standards, so that when you see a label, it really means what it says.
That's great. That sounds promising.
Yeah.
But I bet it's not, like, super simple, right? I mean, I imagine there's going to be some pushback from the industry.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's definitely complicated.
Yeah.
ProPublica actually did a bunch of research on this.
Okay.
And they found out that the plastics industry has been, well, let's just say they've been pretty involved in, like, creating the definition of what recyclable even means.
Wow.
And with all their lobbying and stuff, it might be tough for the FTC to put these stricter rules into practice.
Yeah, it sounds like a real battle, like a battle for truth in labeling.
Absolutely.
So knowing all this, like, what can we as consumers really do to, not get fooled and make better choices?
Well, I think the first thing is just to be aware, like really aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
We can't just blindly trust those recycling symbols anymore.
Right.
We got to understand that they don't always mean what we think they mean. And it's also a good idea to actually do a little research, like see what can actually be recycled in your area.
Okay.
Because those programs, it can be super different depending on where you live.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So I guess what we can do is, yeah, like you said, be more aware of what's really recyclable in our area.
Right.
And I mean, I guess, like, try to choose products with less plastic packaging whenever we can. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, you got it. I mean, being a conscious consumer and making those kinds of choices, even if they seem small, can actually make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And when we start cutting back on plastic, even a little, it sends a message.
Yeah, for sure. This has been a really, eye-opening deep dive for me.
Yeah.
I hope it's been the same for you.
Yeah, me too.
And, remember that, being informed is key.
For sure.
The more we understand about, how plastic recycling really works, the better choices we'll make, right?
Right.
For ourselves and for the planet.
Absolutely.
So before we finish up here, I want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay.
Okay, so how much responsibility should each of us take on, as individuals, to deal with this problem?
That's a great question.
Is it only up to us to figure out these misleading labels and make good choices?
Yeah.
Or should the companies be doing more, to be honest about how recyclable their stuff really is?
That's the question.
It's a tough one, right? There's no easy answers,
Not at all.
but definitely something worth thinking about.
For sure.